Is everything a lie? The West has propaganda too. Why should you believe your view and criticize the Russian narrative when our TV and media is full of the same junk too? This is something I see and hear a lot online, often posed in different ways, and it most often comes from people who not only don't speak the Russian language, but have never visited a Russian-speaking country, and in particular, Russia itself. But well, here's the key difference. Russian propaganda is not the same as Western propaganda. And here's why. Let's look at the foundations of media. In many countries around the world, including my own, we have a somewhat free media. Look, it's not perfect, but it is there. If I want to go out tomorrow, for example, and publish a video about my opinions on the war, maybe a blog or an article, I'm perfectly free to do so. It's free and out there to the public, and rightfully open to criticism. Anyone can access if they desire to do so. No one is going to get arrested or in trouble for reading it, spreading it, sharing it with their friends, and it's rightfully out there amongst a number of competing sources of the public discourse. This is the key difference between our media landscape in many Western countries and in Russia. So if we move our focus and we look at the fundamental system of Russian propaganda and the media landscape, it's incredibly clear. Let's focus on television. It's a somewhat outdated source of news in the West, but still significantly important both here and even more so in Russia. According to recent studies, almost 70%, so 69% of the Russian population access state-controlled TV media at least weekly, with an even further 87% of the elderly population doing so. Now here's the danger. All of this media is either directly or indirectly controlled by the state. And we are talking about dozens and dozens of news channels, corporations, political talk shows, and opinion pieces. All of these having a tied interest directly to the government. That's pretty scary. At this point, some people are saying, sure, but look at the US. There may be more free press, but it comes down to two main camps in politics. We have the likes of CNN and the Fox News camp. Left and right, pick your poison. This is simply not true when it comes to media. There are more than 50 national news-related channels across the US, and that's not including regional, local, or more niche areas. These are based right across the political spectrum, and you're free to choose and intake the info you desire. And that's the kicker, we're often drawn to our bias. In the US specifically, if you are more left-leaning, you're more likely to go to left-leaning sources. If you're more right-leaning, you're more likely to go towards that bias. If you prefer alternative sources and your view is more alternative, you're likely going to seek those out. There is a problem there in itself, but it's very different from state-controlled propaganda. And on the wider base, there are over 1,700 registered TV channels, and that's not even touching the tip of the iceberg of media. The endless bloggers, YouTubers, independent news sites, all of which can freely draw and publish their own conclusions. The scary part is that Russia, by far, has even more. Far ahead of any other nation with 3,300 TV channels, all in part directly responsible and influenced by the state. In Russia, it's clear that multiple sources are more persuasive than a single source, especially if all of those sources contain different arguments that point to the same conclusion. The state bias and narrative. And that's the key. In Russia, you can access different extremes of the same state narrative. Nothing more and nothing less. It is rapid, continuous, and effective. All other voices are drowned out. Of course, there is still some level of access to alternative media sources, whether that's through a VPN or a social media account. But for that traditional mass media consumer, whether that's the older generations or the elderly, it just simply isn't accessible. We often want our news then and there, whether we switch on the TV, pick up a newspaper, and when all of those are controlled by one source, it becomes very difficult to make our own mind up. So the next time you're questioning the news that you're receiving, count yourself lucky. Go out and find an additional source, because you have the ability to do so.